You've entered Bookstorm. Your favorite authors are here to dive down deep into their best-selling books. Stay tuned to brave the storm.
Welcome back to BOOKSTORM Podcast, listeners. I'm your co-host, Kristen Civiletto, and with me is Julia Noel Rose. And we are just thrilled that you're tuning in from 105 countries and territories, all 50 U.S. states. And we know why. It is because we are bringing you the very best authors out there today. And today is no exception. We are just so excited because we've got internationally best-selling author Gareth Brown. Welcome, Gareth.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Delighted to be here.
Well, we are delighted because your book, The Society of Unknowable Objects, I'm going to show this really cool cover. It was awesome. And
thank you.
You know, it's your second novel, and I know it's a lot of pressure when you're writing a second novel, but boy, did you deliver. And in fact, I want to read a quote from one of our guest authors, Nikki Ehrlich, in the past. She said, "A fast-paced flight of magic, mystery, and whimsy, whisking readers on an around-the-world adventure alongside a lovable cast of characters, tasked with protecting the world's most valuable secret, and perhaps keeping a few secrets of their own." We love that quote, and we're going to talk all about this book, The Society of Unknowable Objects, and we're very excited about it. Now, but first, I want to just tell our listeners a little bit about you and your background.
Okay.
Your first book, The Book of Doors, it was an instant Sunday Times bestseller, hit the USA Today bestseller list. It's been translated into languages. We're very excited for you. Any chance that there's a movie on the way?
I mean, I would hope so. The TV rights for Book of Doors were sold to a production company in the US, but the option lapsed. They didn't manage to get it made by the time the option ran out. So the rights are now available again. If any of your listeners are very keen to produce a TV or film, I'm very happy to engage with them. But yeah, that would be lovely, but not yet.
Well, that's exciting. And we've heard a lot of rights lapse because of the writer's strike and, COVID and all that other stuff. So it's kind of an interesting time. But this book was an Amazon editor's best book of 2024, The Book of Doors we're talking about, and also a finalist for other awards and accolades, which is just tremendous. Now you love travel and barbecues and also watching snooker. What is snooker?
Snooker's it's like billiards or pool, but it's very popular in the UK and has been for the last 30, 40 years. It's popular in other parts of the world. It's very popular in China at the moment, but I don't think it's quite as popular in the US. I think it tends to be pool that's played more in the US. But yeah, it's like pool on a much bigger table with red balls and black and pink and all the colours of the rainbow, and green bays instead of blue or red that you sometimes get in pool tables. So it's nice to watch on TV. It's one of those things you can switch on and just switch off your brain and sort of go into the alpha waves and relax. It's very relaxing TV.
Awesome. Now, I know that you live with your wife and your Skye Terriers in the capital of Scotland, and I want to know how you pronounce it because there is a raging debate in the US about how to pronounce this name of the city. How do you say it?
So it is pronounced Edinburgh. So it sounds like BRU at the end, bruh, rather than
Edinburgh.
Edinburgh. Yeah, that's how you pronounce it, rather than Edinburgh or Edinburgh, or I think technically it should be Edinburgh if you're speaking in Scottish, but it's usually pronounced Edinburgh.
Okay, we had a raging debate before our interview, and we both came up with two different versions, but Julia was right.
I don't know if I would say right. I was just maybe leaning towards that
Closer.
side.
The closest.
Yeah.
Well, I know she wants to tell us a little bit about the story before we dive in.
I do. So in this book, we enter the world of unknowable objects, magical items that most people have no idea possess powers. It's been quiet for decades, but the 3 current members of a secret society have remained watchful, meeting every 6 months in the basement of a bookshop in London. They've pledged to protect their archive of magical items, and they're hiding them away from the world, and they're keeping the world safe from the items. But when Frank Simpson, the longest-standing member of the Society of Unknowable Objects, hears of a new artifact coming to light in Hong Kong, he sends Magda Sparks, author by day and newest member, to investigate. Within hours of arriving in Hong Kong, she connects with James, but soon they're facing death and danger. a professional killer who seems to know all about unknowable objects, specifically one that was stolen from him a decade before. Magda escapes in spectacular fashion and returns to London where secrets begin to spill out. Now she and others are on a mission that takes them across the US to confront some truly scary things, even the truth about themselves. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, that sounds like a perfect summary, tantalizing enough that hopefully people want to read it.
Well, good. It got us, so
Great.
we're in. So there is a scene where Frank shows Magda this impossible box, and he tells her to never look inside it directly. And I absolutely love this quote you have here. To look on a possibility, it's too much for the human mind. I was hoping you could elaborate on what Frank meant by that. And were Londoners grappling with the impossible, like the impossible as a concept, as evidence of magic became more pronounced?
So I think the quote is to look on an impossibility is too
Oh,
much rather than a possibility. But yeah, I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One is a bit of a spoiler in terms of how the box is used later in the plot, so I wouldn't say that. But I always thought sometimes magic touches, the impossible or the uncanny, the things that we can't quite understand. It's where maybe a different reality crashes up against ours, and it's something we can barely conceive of, and maybe even looking at that, it'll do things to your mind. I always sort of imagined it a bit like sometimes when you look at an optical illusion, you get that moment where your brain is sort of doing a somersault, it's trying to understand, and your eyes and your brain are not, and that does something to your brain. So I was imagining if you're looking on something that's just genuinely impossible, that has no frame of reference in our world, your brain just couldn't conceive that, and it would flip out, or you would have some sort of mental crash. So I wanted that to be some sort of, I suppose, symbol of how magic is a different reality to the reality that we're in. Even though the book is very grounded in the real world and the very mundane stuff that we know of, it's connecting with this completely different reality. And the impossible box that you mentioned in your question is exactly that. It's a box you open, and it does amazing, impossible things. And if you look in it, it will blow your mind, literally.
It's interesting you say, like, if we see something that we can't necessarily comprehend, that we have this sort of mental crash out. Is there an emotion or something that it is kind of inherent to humans? Do you think fear is like one of the first things because we don't understand something?
Yeah, I think that's the evolutionary thing in the background, isn't it? It's the wariness of the unknown, and even I suppose the human thing of being able to recognize faces. That's the opposite of that. It's being able to know your safety. You recognize your mother's face. That's almost like an evolutionary thing if you know where to go for safety. But it manifests, I suppose, in the fear of spiders or fear of the dark. That's your lizard brain telling you don't go near those things. Those are potentially harmful. So fear it's not just an emotion. It's an evolutionary force, I suppose, in that sense. It's if we didn't have fear, we wouldn't have survived as a species. So it's a sort of inheritance in our DNA. It's something we carry with us. And I suppose civilization trains you out of that to some extent. It trains you to maybe engage with your fears, but fundamentally, we survive because we know to be scared of things.
Yeah. You have thematically a lot of interesting things running throughout this book, but one I wanted to
Mm,
ask you about in particular, and there's so many, literally ranging from even biblical references to colonialism, but one of them was about this idea of generational impacts and
mm,
and legacies and families. Here we had second and third generations of characters who were profoundly impacted by what happened or choices that their grandparents and parents made. And I wanted to ask you because some of them vowed to do things differently.
mm.
Is that always possible? Do we sometimes find ourselves just falling into that legacy? What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's the aspiration to be a better person warring with your own, your tendencies that you can't always control. So Frank's a prime example of that as the man who essentially runs the society. He made choices in the past to try and make the society a better thing than it was in his mind, and he's tried to do the right thing as he sees it. And I think most readers would think he was trying to do the right thing, but it sort of turned him into a different sort of person, a very controlling, very secretive, maybe making slightly wrong choices sometimes, but coming from the best of intentions. So you can try to do the right thing, but sometimes maybe whether it's the fear we were talking about, or maybe it's loss of control, it turns you, or your instincts come through, and it's not always what you're wanting to do is you can't deliver on it because your instincts don't let you. So he's a prime example where he was trying to do the right thing, but it almost, I don't want to say perverted him, but it changed him. It turned him into a different person than he might have been otherwise. And maybe he ended up straying from the path a little bit as a result. He was going on too long, and he needed a fresh pair of eyes to come in, or a fresh perspective, and he didn't allow that for far too long. And that's why we end up in the mess we end up in at the start of the book.
Yeah. I kept thinking about the fact that we can look at what our parents and grandparents have done and sometimes judge that harshly,
Mm,
but we weren't in the circumstances they were in. We weren't in maybe a time of war or a time of pressing.
yeah.
So it really makes you think about those generational curses,
Yeah.
so to
It's,
speak.
it's even that thing, I'm sure we've all had the experience of when you're 15 or 20 and you look at your parents and you think, I'll never do that. I'll never be like that. Why are they doing those things to me? And then when you're 45 or 50 or whatever it is, and you think, oh, that's why they were doing those things. I understand now. So you're right, it's the perspective. You don't have the perspective that a person older than you have. And in this case, you don't have the perspective, you don't live in the circumstances that somebody lived in 50 or 100 years ago and have to make the decisions that they made at that time. So yeah, absolutely. Something about the inheritance, the inherited legacy of what our forefathers did is right through the center of this book.
Yeah.
So, whether that trauma is generational or personal or circumstantial, this book really seemed like a meditation on broken people generally. So,
Mm,
people who can't necessarily coexist with the rest of society, people like Lucas who may lack a soul. And
mm,
that really begged an interesting question of, do we just put these people away? Do we put them somewhere else? Do we try to fix them? Is that within our power? So I saw a lot of parallels with modern day society and how our own punitive and penal system is treated.
mm.
So I was kind of wondering what you were thinking along those lines.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I don't think I was thinking of anything like the penal system, but what I was thinking of when it came to Lucas specifically, I think was we'll all have encountered people in our life who are not bad people in any way, but for whatever reason, their groove isn't the same groove as most of society, whether that's, mental health problems or shyness or introversion, and they just don't fit into the jigsaw puzzle that the rest of society fits in. And society then can sometimes struggle to deal with those people. And even though they're not they're not evil or they don't have ill intent, they just don't get on. And I was thinking of those sorts of people who can feel themselves isolated or lonely, even though there's no, they're not doing anything bad. They just can't make that connection, make that work. And there's lots of those people all around society, maybe even more so now than ever before. There's a lot of sort of lonely people in the world. How do they get on? How do we connect with them? And in this particular case, in Lucas, it's sort of taken to an extreme in the book in that this is a person who, for most of the book, arguably does nothing. They don't do anything evil. They don't do anything particularly with evil intent. They might end up doing evil things, but not with evil intent. And Magda has to make quite a major decision about how to deal with that person towards the end. And I wanted that to be, as I think it is in the book, a genuine moral dilemma. The choice she has to make is this person, through no ill will, is dangerous. But to stop them being dangerous or to stop them posing a threat, I potentially have to do something that's immoral by some views or dangerous. So which one? And I genuinely didn't know as I was writing it which way she would go. And I hope when readers are reading it and they're wrestling with it, they would be wrestling with the same sorts of things. What would I do? Because he's not a bad person. He's done some bad things, but not, how would I deal with this? I tried to write it genuinely as a dilemma to give some sort of life to Magda's, the struggle that the decision that Magda has to make at the end is genuinely a struggle for her. And I hope readers will not necessarily know what they would do either, because there's pros and cons both ways.
Yes, I was stressed at the end. I was like, oh my goodness. And then again, we're not going to give away a spoiler, but then the questions that spring to her mind and that people ask her at the very end of the book, it's like, oh, what is the right answer? It was
Yeah.
very well
And
done.
thank you. Thank you.
Now, obviously, this is a fantasy. So we've got
Mm,
magic and power and ideas about power running throughout this entire story.
yeah.
So I want to ask you, we know the old saying that absolute power corrupts absolutely. And did we see that in action here? Did we see people who, when faced with a choice of what they could do, some of them just took it to the absolute extreme and maybe all of them? What are your thoughts on that?
So I think Magda's journey is really interesting in the book. So Magda's the main character. So she starts off almost naively sort of excited by magic. She's a fully grown woman, she's a trained lawyer, and she's an author by day, quite a privileged woman, comes from wealth, but she's sort of almost childishly excited by magic, and she can't, she wishes there was more magic and she could do more things with magic, and she's part of the society that's trying to control things. And she goes on a journey through the book, almost towards the end of the book, where she's done an about turn, and she's now a bit more like Frank, our mentor, I suppose, and seeing the potential downside. But I don't know if she's corrupted. Is she corrupted, or is her eyes opened? But then she does do things in pursuit of trying to protect magic. She's almost, and Frank as well, they almost do the things they're trying to stop happening, to stop those things happening, if that makes sense. So
Yes.
it is a bit of a, it's almost like, should the police have guns to stop people having guns? It's almost that sort of argument. Should the people who are trying to stop magic being out in the world use magic to stop it being out in the world? I don't know the answer to that. I almost write it to sort of just pose these questions and explore the questions from the views of the characters. And Magda has one view, and other members of the society have completely different views. And having the tension of those different characters having different views is part of the fun of writing the book, trying to almost explore the arguments through the different warring perspectives in the course of the story. So yeah, I don't know if it corrupts them. I think certainly they do things they wouldn't want to do if they were following the best principles, but maybe they feel they have to do those things to hold up the principles. It's almost a circle. It's almost like an endless circle of debate.
Yeah, but those moral dilemmas are interesting because we all think about, are we justified in our wrongdoing? And
Yeah.
where is that line of, yes, you
Yeah.
are justified versus not? And we
Do
see
they-
several your characters wrestling with that.
Yeah, it's that, do the ends justify the means? I'm trying to do a good thing. How many bad things can I do until it's not okay to be doing the bad things to have the good thing happen? Exactly that. And they do wrestle with it, and some more than others. Some are much more, in the book Henrietta, for example, is much more laissez-faire with the magic. Yeah, let's use it, and let's just do the things that need to be done. Where others, like Frank, initially at least, and Magda, are much more about, no, we need to protect and not use the magic. So, but then events mean that they end up having to use it. So yeah, it was a fun part of the writing the book, is trying to work out where each of the characters' positions would start and end as a result of the events.
I love that
So-
because with Henry, I'm sorry, I mean to
No,
cut you
you're
off,
fine.
but there's one point where Henry used a power to
Mm.
enrich herself, but it was because the people were bad people that she
Yeah.
was taking from. And so I was thinking to myself, where would most people
Yeah.
fall on
So-
that one?
It's the Robin Hood thing. Was Robin
Right.
Hood a good guy or a bad guy? Yeah, but then I suppose Robin Hood was redistributing the wealth a bit. Henry isn't so much redistributing the wealth;
Right.
she's redistributing it to herself. But yeah, if you're robbing from a bad person, are you a bad person?
So you said that as you were writing, you weren't necessarily sure what these, characters were going to end up doing, and you were kind of
Mhm.
using this as a tool to explore the options generally. And I'm curious, did you find that in your personal position on things that your opinion shifted as you were writing over time? So in the beginning, you maybe thought one thing, and by the end, you found yourself kind of thinking another?
I don't think so. I think, well, to the extent, and I had this a little with the previous book as well, which was also about magic in the real world. And in both of these books, magic is essentially a power. It's like a weapon, or in any other sort of book, it might be like secrets or weaponry or something. It's a power, and the fundamental question is, what do people do with that power? A good person or a bad person, or a morally grey person, or somebody who's right in the middle. What would they do with the power? And I think my position is probably, I don't trust people enough, and I think that comes through. And maybe I'm a bit of a Frank. I think maybe I'm too busy looking at the world as it is at the moment. I don't think enough people can be trusted with the dangerous things that might exist, whether it's magic or weaponry. And we would be better with more control than probably we have. But then I don't think I'd go as far as Frank. I think maybe there's a bit of Henrietta in me as well. Is it'd be nice sometimes to be able to use a bit of magic just for a bit of fun, but you have to be able to control it. So I think I was pretty consistent in that all the way through. But maybe the voices of the different characters were me testing myself on that and seeing, do I still believe that or not? But I still don't think, if magic existed in the world, I don't think I would want it to be free for all. I think it would need to be very strictly controlled by people who you can trust. I suppose that's a question: how do you know who you can trust? But or maybe it should just be locked away so nobody can access it. But it's just, again, I suppose it's, could you do it? Could you use magic only for very good things?
Yeah.
But who would decide what the good thing is? So it's, I don't think my view changed on that. It's probably better we just don't have magic. Let's keep it to the books rather than having it in the real world.
Well, especially the backdrop in your story is we're talking serious magic. We're talking people
Yeah,
who can wield godlike powers.
yeah, absolutely. No limit, almost in some cases, and some of the worst people, point, on purpose. Some of the people in the book are genuinely awful people, the worst people you'd want to have that sort of power. And I suppose part of writing it was to think through, if somebody genuinely awful did have a power like this, what would they use it for? Could they
Yeah.
be stopped or not? So, what's the worst case scenario of magic like this exists in the world? And then I suppose on the counterpoint is, what's the best case scenario, which is, I suppose, what the society is trying to be. It's trying to be the conscience of the world when it comes to magic, but even then it fails and falters a little bit because we're all human.
Yes, especially in today's day and age where we have different philosophies, different approaches. There's no
Mm,
homogeneity to how we think.
yeah,
So we're certainly not going to see a absolute moral code
no,
that can govern something like that. It's good. Very well done.
thank you.
This theme and, magic and books, first of all, I think is so needed right now. Like,
Mm,
just people are, looking for something new and some sort of escape. And it was really unique, but it felt like a playground, like
yeah.
you're playing with different ideas and you're playing with these different people and seeing how all the dynamics kind of come together to solve these common issues amongst them. So,
Yeah, playground is quite a nice way to describe it, actually, because I don't plan my books. I like to discover the stories as I'm writing it, like I'm reading it. And so I suppose it is like a playground when you're sort of pantsing like that. I start with an idea or an image, and I just start and see where I end up. And sometimes I just throw things in, and even to the point I've said on a few conversations I've had with people that sometimes I'll get to the end of a chapter and just ask myself, what would surprise me if it happened now? Which is a pretty awful way to go about writing a book, but it can be quite sort of creative. It can get you thinking, and then I have to work out if I can actually make it happen or not. The next day I'll come back and think, oh, why did I do that? But sometimes it can just throw a nice little curveball in, and I suppose that is like just playing in the sandbox, just trying something completely different and see what happens. So nobody's ever called it that before, but yeah, playground's a really nice way to think about it. I like to try and enjoy when I'm writing rather than just having a set. I've got to write this today, this today, this today, and working my way through it. I don't like to plan. I like to just make it up as I go.
yeah, no outlines here.
No outlines, exactly.
No. So my final question for you is, if you're willing to share, if there's anything going on, project-wise, your next book, or thoughts that you're just willing to share, kind of what you have coming up next, because you should be basking in the release of this one, absolutely. But we're really curious. We are really looking forward to seeing what you do.
Ah, thanks. So yeah, I've got another book contract, thankfully, in the UK and the US. So I'm about halfway through writing what I hope will be the next book. I don't think that will be out till, what year are we in? 2025. I think it'll be 2027 probably, because I have to deliver it by very early next year, and then it's usually the 12 months after that. So um, that it's a different sort of book. I suppose it's similar in that it's grounded in the real world. I like to kind of put things in the real world because I think it's more accessible for people rather than some hard sci-fi or hard fantasy. It's sometimes harder for people to get into them. So, but it's there's no magic in it. It's probably more of a sort of a soft science fiction set in the real world. But
Mm.
I hope playing with similar sort of ideas in terms of all of my stuff. I think is a what if sort of question. What if there was magic in the real world, or what if there was whatever this book's about? What if this happened in the real world? So yeah, that will hopefully be a year or so ahead from now. And then I'll have to write another book after that as well. So I've got another two books to write that I'll definitely write. And I don't know what the fourth one will be, but the third one hopefully will be out 2027.
That is
That's
awesome.
awesome.
We hope
Yeah.
you come back.
Yeah,
Yes.
especially first of all, I think you have a fantastic mind and creativity,
Oh,
and
thank
that
you.
comes shining through in your both of your books that are out. So the Society of Unknowable Objects, I think listeners are going to love it. And I'm going to send them to your website. You have a website at garethbrownbooks.com. You're on Instagram, Blue Sky, and X. And we're just so thankful that you came on the show to dive deep into your book. We loved it, and we wish you all the success in the world, Gareth.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Well, now I'm so curious how a science fiction book comes about after, because if I were writing, I would find it hard to constrict myself,
Yeah.
like almost like a challenge. Like I was once writing, from a mystical place, and now I'm kind of drawing it back and grounding myself in reality. So I'm so curious to see how he does that.
Yeah, I am too. My gosh, he has a fertile mind and so creative. All right, listeners, we've got some other authors coming up we know you're going to love. We've got Mary Alice Monroe with Where the Rivers Merge, Daniel Silva, An Inside Job, Don Winslow, The Final Score, Joanne Harris with the prequel, The Chocolat with Vienne. We've got so many more. We're just so excited about this summer lineup. It's really awesome, really engaging, entertaining books. Now, you know where to find us. We're at BOOKSTORMPodcast.com. We're also on Instagram, on X, on YouTube. And we know why you're coming back, because we're bringing you the very best authors writing today. They're here live on BOOKSTORM Podcast.